lightkeeper's daughter was a strange child. She wouldn't speak to the men who rode provisions to the island, no matter what they said or did to get her attention. One of the men swore he'd heard her barking like a seal. They all agreed. It was the isolation that had made her so odd. She had no mother. Her mother had died in childbirth. She barely had a father. The lightkeeper was a silent man, and when he wasn't fixing things in the engine room or tending the lights in the tower, he escaped to his books. But the girl wasn't entirely alone. The sea was her companion. She could read the waves the way other children could read their mothers' faces. She knew the tides and the currents. She could sense when the weather was about to change. Summer gales, winter storms, they didn't frighten her. There was something about the wind that stirred her blood. Now, was she lonely? You would think so. She was definitely a prisoner, confined to a few bare rocks miles from any real land. And yet, she seemed content. When the weather was fair and the tide was out, she explored the pools, combed the rocks for treasure. She would take the rowboat out when the water was calm and stare into the depths for hours at a time, transfixed by the shadows passing below. She spent entire days tracing the flight of seabirds from one horizon to another. In the summer, the seals congregated around her, a huge throng sunning themselves on the rocks. None of these wild things seemed to mind the girl's presence. She could get close enough almost to touch them, and they wouldn't shy away. Then one spring day, the girl turned 13. The lightkeeper remembered it was his daughter's birthday. Well, he kept it to himself. And as for the girl, she had no way of knowing it. She paid no attention to calendars. She felt a strange restlessness that day. And that night, the sea followed her into her dreams. The tides ebbed and flowed around her bed. The surf caught her and carried her over the waves, under the waves, down and down through the black water.